안녕하세요. 제 이름은 김하나입니다. My name is Crystal Hana Kim, and I'm the author of If You Leave Me and The Stone Home. I am so excited to be here with you all. My novels are going to be translated into Korean by Sodam, and I'm very honored and just delighted to be here with you all and thankful that you are hopefully going to be readers of my works. So, as a Korean American who was born in the United States, I've always been very interested in my Korean culture, in Korean history, and the events that led my family to eventually move here to the United States. I have been always the type of person who looks backward at history in order to understand the present. And also, I'm really close to my 외할머니, and she would tell me stories of being a young teenager during the Korean War, of having to flee her home, of the hardships that kind of transformed her and pushed her into adulthood. So all of those reasons were kind of in my head when I started writing If You Leave Me. The other main reason is that in America, the Korean War is considered the forgotten war. It's really not taught very much, even though the United States had a big role in the Korean War. And also, the few novels there are about the Korean War are often written from the perspective of American male soldiers. So when I decided to write my first novel, I knew that I really wanted to center the perspective of ordinary Koreans, of a woman, of the people that reminded me of my family. And so that is why I decided to start this novel and have it be my first novel out in the world. I did a lot of research to try to recreate the historical setting of the novel. You know, I was not born in the 1950s. I didn't live through the Korean War. So it was really important to me that I did a lot of research. I interviewed family members. I interviewed my 할머니 and my 고모 and my husband's 할머니. I read memoirs of those who survived the Korean War. I watched documentaries. I watched movies, and I also really pored over photographs of Korea as it changed during and after the Korean War. And I did this because it is so important to me as a writer to get the reader as deeply inside the characters as possible. That's one of my goals. I want the reader to feel like they can taste and smell and feel and see just as much as my characters. So getting those details right is really important to me, and something that I worked really hard on in If You Leave Me and in all of my writing. Food is so important to me because it's so important to Korean culture. I grew up with my parents and my family always asking, 하나야 먹었어? 하나야 먹었니? And whenever I went to Korea during the summers, my 할머니 would say, 하나야 먹었어? 하나야 우리 먹자. 하나야 먹었니? And so I know how important food is, and I believe that food is a way that Koreans show their love and their care for one another. I wanted to make sure that was represented in the book. And so there's a lot of food, a lot of meals, and a lot of specific details surrounding food. I also wanted to incorporate a lot of food because food is such a universal language of care. And so for my English-speaking readers who may not be familiar with Korea, food is a way to invite them into the story. I think Hemi chose not to get divorced from Jisoo because at that time it would have been incredibly difficult, perhaps impossible, for a woman to divorce her husband. That is truly something that was unheard of, very uncommon in 1960s Korea, and it would have come with a lot of taboo and shame and would have put her children in a very difficult position. I think that Hemi is someone who, though she feels deeply, is also a practical person, and she often puts the happiness of others above her own happiness. And that is what led her to this relationship with Jisoo. That's such a good question, because I would hope that I would choose Kyunghwan, that I would choose this deep, intense love. But to be honest, I created a novel that I felt like was the most realistic and representative of its time. So if I were Hemi and I had grown up and survived the Korean War, I'd survived so much hardship, and I had already kind of put my happiness aside at a young age in order to make sure that I supported my mother and my younger brother, I would probably make the same choice that she made, because she was taught and ingrained from a young age that her value is security and that her happiness is secondary to overall stability. And so I think it makes sense. It's tragic in many ways, but it makes sense as to why she made the choices that she did. And that's what I wanted to explore in this novel. I wanted to explore a character who we as readers feel so much for, and we might feel frustrated with her decisions, but also we understand why she's making those decisions. That's a tricky one, because as a writer, I want readers to come away from the book with answers to questions that they have, right? I really believe that as a writer, after I finish the book and I give it to the reader, it's their own, and they bring their own experiences and troubles and loves and biases and preferences into the book. So I, as a writer, try to input as many different messages as possible into the novel. So for example, I hope that some readers come away from the book feeling a deeper connection and understanding to their history and their culture. I hope that maybe a reader who has a difficult relationship with their mother comes away from the book feeling greater empathy for their mother. I hope that perhaps someone sees their relationship with their siblings reflected in the book. I really try to incorporate as many different messages as possible so that it can meet the reader wherever they are in their life circumstances. That's a great question. I am a writer who loves adding in little secrets throughout the novel. I think it's a lot of fun. So if you are reading carefully, I would say keep track of the different flowers that show up in the novel. All the flowers mentioned are native to Korea, and they are often strategically associated with different characters or events in Hemi's life. So you'll see that the American cover has these flowers illustrated, and they all represent different people or events or feelings associated with Hemi. So for example, this flower is associated with Hemi's children. I would say take a look and see what you find. Also, if you are the type of reader who likes to keep track and kind of study a novel, I have colors associated with different feelings and characters in the book. So for example, if you track the color orange, that is often associated with youth and naivety and childhood wonder. So I would say keep reading and see if you can find what the other colors mean in the novel. Writing is so important to how I live and see and understand the world. Writing is like breathing to me. Writing is what makes me happy. Writing is what I like to do every day. Writing is essential. Writing is how I understand the big questions of our lives, because I need to write and make a story in order to understand who I am and what I think about these abstract questions of happiness, motherhood, history, and how we have come to be where we are in the world. I've been so excited to see diaspora literature embraced by Korea. You know, as a Korean American who was born in the United States, I feel such a deep connection, but also a longing for Korea. I feel like I miss Korea whenever I'm here, but I also feel like I'm separate from it, that I'm not fully embraced by Korea sometimes. So to have my novels translated into Korean is such an honor for me and makes me feel really gratified. I also think that Korean diaspora literature is really important because I think that diaspora people like I have a different perspective on history, and so perhaps we can shed light on events and stories like the Korean War from a different angle, a different prism. And I hope that that's what you feel when you read this novel. Thank you so much for your interest in my novels. Thank you so much for reading If You Leave Me. Thank you for reading The Stone Home. I put my heart into both of these novels. Both If You Leave Me and The Stone Home are inspired by my curiosity for Korean history and Korean culture, but also one of my main goals as a writer is to make stories that feel emotionally true to the reader. I want to write about human experience. So I hope that when you read my novels, you feel like you're inside the characters and you understand their hopes and their dreams, and you laugh with them and cry with them and smile because of them and feel frustrated by them and just truly feel as many different human emotions as possible. I try to write stories about love and family that will make you entertained while also perhaps seeing our shared culture from a new perspective. Thank you so much. 감사합니다. I hope to meet you soon. 안녕히 계세요.